The story began in the glow of screens, in the quiet hum of endless notifications that never seemed to stop. The city outside pulsed with traffic and neon, but for Emily Rourke, most of her life had shrunk to the four corners of her phone. She was, by all appearances, just another face in the crowded feed, a young woman with a modest following, carefully curated pictures, and a cautious smile that never gave away too much. Yet beneath the surface, she carried wounds that had been carved not by knives or fists, but by the invisible hand of public humiliation. It had started with a single post. One photograph, shared without her consent, paired with words twisted into cruelty, had been enough to turn her from someone admired into someone mocked. Her ex-boyfriend, a man named Nathan Carr, had mastered the art of weaponizing perception. With one clever edit, one snide caption, he had unleashed the mob. The comments came like falling glass, sharp, relentless, cutting deeper with each line. People she had never met laughed at her, judged her, called her names that stuck like tar. By the time she managed to delete her accounts, the damage was irreversible. She lost her job in public relations, friends avoided her calls, and her parents' faces carried the shame of association. For weeks, Emily stayed silent. She let the world believe Nathan's version of the story, let the whispers settle into the concrete of reputation. But silence is rarely the end. It is the pause before something else takes shape. While he paraded around as the clever, charming victim of a crazy ex, Emily began to plan. If Nathan had used the power of social media to destroy her, then she would use the same tools to unmake him. She started slowly, cautiously, learning the machinery of online influence, not as a user, but as an architect. Fake accounts sprouted like weeds under her care, each with its own personality, backstory, and voice. She slipped into forums, private groups, message boards where Nathan was known to lurk. She fed the soil with little seeds of rumor, subtle suggestions that maybe he wasn't who he pretended to be. He bragged often about his work in digital marketing, and it was easy to take screenshots of past contradictions, piecing them together into a puzzle that showed him as a fraud. Soon the echo began. Anonymous comments mirrored her planted doubts. Strangers repeated them as if they were truths they had discovered themselves. The beauty of the digital world was that once a whisper started, it multiplied, reshared by people who never questioned its source. Emily knew how to make doubts stick, how to use the very algorithms that once buried her to now bury him. The turning point came when she leaked what she knew he valued most, his clients. Nathan had boasted of handling accounts for small but growing businesses, and Emily, with her quiet research, uncovered emails and private notes where he cut corners, inflated numbers, and pocketed money that wasn't his. Screenshots appeared online under the veil of whistleblowing. Suddenly, companies that had once trusted him began backing away. Nathan responded with the same charm that had once fooled her, dismissing it all as smear tactics, but his voice carried less weight now. The audience that once applauded him was now skeptical. Emily escalated carefully. She posted photos of him at parties where he had sworn he hadn't been, times when he lied to clients about working late. She crafted narratives around his arrogance, letting strangers stitch them together into something damning. By the time she released the final blow, a recording of him mocking a disabled client during a drunken night, it wasn't just gossip anymore. It was evidence. The backlash came swiftly. His accounts flooded with angry comments, hashtags appeared calling for boycotts, old friends distanced themselves. Nathan raged online, shouting into the void that he was the victim of a conspiracy. But in the age of social media, rage without proof was just noise. The internet had decided, and once it decided, there was no undoing it. Emily didn't watch with joy. There was no triumph in seeing someone unravel. Instead, there was a cold stillness, a sense of balance being restored. She had not destroyed him with fists or fire. She had simply held up a mirror and let the crowd do the rest. In the end, Nathan vanished from the digital world, deleting his accounts one by one until his presence dissolved. The same invisibility that had once been forced upon Emily now consumed him. And while she did not regain the life she had lost, she found something else, a lesson etched in pixels and shadows. In the age of social media, reputations were fragile things. Revenge no longer needed blades or bullets. All it required was patience, anonymity, and the willingness to let the crowd believe what you wanted them to believe. And so, in that endless cycle of posts and reposts, Emily discovered the truth. Justice in the digital age was not blind. It was viral. Nathan's fall did not happen overnight. That was the thing about digital justice. It was a slow corrosion, like rust eating away at metal until it snapped under the slightest pressure. At first, he treated the rumors as background noise, the kind of chatter that always circled around anyone who had made a name for himself online. He posted his usual slick videos, offered his hollow charm to his followers, even laughed at the whispers and interviews with minor podcasts. But beneath the curated surface, Emily could see the cracks forming. His tone sharpened. His posts grew defensive. He began arguing in the comments, something he had once scorned others for doing. Emily watched carefully, never striking too hard at once, never leaving fingerprints. Her aliases multiplied, each one designed to fit neatly into a different corner of the digital ecosystem. One account posted technical breakdowns of a supposed fraud, another dripped with casual disdain like a disillusioned fan, while yet another masqueraded as a former client demanding answers. She understood one vital truth. People believed what resonated with their own suspicions. All she had to do was guide them. But Nathan wasn't as careless as she once knew him to be. When the pressure began to mount, he tried to fight back. He hired an online reputation manager, someone whose job was to bury negative stories under layers of glowing articles and fake testimonials. Overnight, Emily's carefully planted stories were drowned beneath press releases about Nathan's groundbreaking work and commitment to integrity. She almost smiled at the irony. He was using the same tricks she had mastered. Still, Emily had the advantage. She wasn't trying to build a reputation. She was trying to destroy one. And destruction was always easier than creation. She slipped into darker corners of the net, places where anonymity was less a shield and more a weapon. From there, she fed files to journalists hungry for scandal. The beauty of the modern age was that once one outlet took the bait, others rushed to follow, unwilling to be left behind. Nathan's name appeared in headlines not about his success, but about his questionable practices. He scrambled to explain, his public apologies only amplifying the sense that he had something to hide. And yet, as Nathan fought, Emily felt something unexpected stirring in herself. Doubt. The comments under his posts began to mirror the same cruelty she once endured. People mocking his appearance, dissecting his every word, turning him into less of a man and more of a caricature. She had wanted justice, yes, but was this what justice looked like? The mob was a beast, and once it tasted blood, it didn't stop. Still, she pressed forward. Because Nathan wasn't just guilty of arrogance, he was guilty of ruining her, and that wound had never closed. One night, however, Emily made a mistake. In her eagerness, she posted from the wrong account, one too close to her old identity. Within minutes, someone pointed out the overlap, questioning whether the mysterious whistleblower and Emily Rourke were the same person. Panic flared in her chest. She deleted the post, scrubbed the account, but suspicion lingered. For the first time, she felt the heat of exposure, the fear that her careful mask might slip. Nathan, perhaps sensing weakness, seized on it. He made a video, his voice sharp, his eyes blazing, calling out a former lover with a vendetta. He never used her name, but everyone knew. The comments split. Some rushed to his side, convinced he was the target of a bitter ex. Others dismissed him, pointing to the mountain of evidence that had already surfaced. Emily waited, breath caught in her throat, to see which way the tide would turn. And then something remarkable happened. The internet chose not to believe him. Maybe it was the smugness in his tone. Maybe it was the sheer weight of the scandals already tied to his name, but his attempt to paint himself as the victim only deepened his downfall. From there, the descent was unstoppable. Clients abandoned him in droves. Old friends leaked private conversations that painted him as manipulative and cruel. Lawsuits began to circle, slow and methodical, like vultures. Nathan vanished from the platforms one by one, his presence dissolving until only fragments of his name lingered in the corners of forgotten forums. Emily sat in her small apartment, staring at the empty glow of her phone screen. There was no satisfaction, no rush of triumph, only a quiet emptiness. She had won, yes. She had reclaimed some semblance of balance. But she had also learned something darker. In the digital age, revenge never ended cleanly. It left behind wreckage not just of the guilty, but of anyone who dared to fight them. And yet, late at night, when the city hummed with neon and the feeds kept scrolling endlessly, Emily felt a strange sense of power. She had once been destroyed by the crowd, but now she had bent it to her will. That knowledge, heavy and sharp, was both her curse and her comfort. The reckoning was over. But the game of shadows, whispers, and screens was only just beginning. Nathan's disappearance from social media should have been the end. It should have been the closing chapter, the final note in a story that had dragged on too long. But stories rarely end cleanly, especially ones written in the ink of revenge. For Emily, the silence that followed was unnerving. She had expected relief, a kind of release that would let her breathe again, but instead the quiet felt like a trap, as if Nathan were lurking just outside the glow of her screen, waiting for his chance. For weeks, she scrolled compulsively, searching for traces of him. At first, nothing. His name became a ghost, mentioned only in bitter threads about frauds and failures, another cautionary tale swallowed by the endless churn of the digital world. Then, one night, a message appeared in her inbox. The sender was anonymous, the text brief. "You think this is over?" Her chest tightened. She deleted the message instantly, but the words stayed. The rational part of her told herself it could be anyone, some troll who had connected the dots. But deep down, she knew. Nathan was still out there. Emily had underestimated him before, and it nearly destroyed her. She couldn't afford that mistake again. She began to watch more carefully. Strange accounts began following her new profiles. Some left subtle comments, innocuous on the surface but lined with meaning, phrases Nathan had used to taunt her in private, jokes only he would make. It was as if he were breathing down her neck through the wires, reminding her that the internet was not just her weapon, but his playground too. The tension seeped into her daily life. She started noticing cars idling longer than they should near her apartment. Emails arrived from companies she had never contacted, offering her jobs too good to be true. She ignored them all, but the paranoia grew roots. Nathan wasn't just angry, he was calculating. And if he couldn't reclaim his reputation online, perhaps he would come for her offline. Emily faced a choice: retreat into silence again, or double down. And silence, she knew, was just another kind of death. So she sharpened her tools. She dove deeper into his past, tracing his digital footprint like a detective piecing together a crime scene. Old college forums, discarded accounts, business records left carelessly unprotected. Nathan had been reckless in the arrogance of his rise, never imagining someone would one day weaponize his history against him. Emily unearthed debts, broken relationships, even whispers of criminal dealings he had buried under charm and marketing gloss. This time, she didn't scatter rumors. She crafted a narrative, a full dossier that painted him not just as a fraud but as a predator, someone who used his influence to manipulate, exploit, and discard people. She sent it not to the public, but to the authorities, to journalists who still circled the story like sharks waiting for blood. But Nathan anticipated her. Days later, her phone buzzed with another anonymous message. "Nice try." Attached was a photo of her apartment building, taken from across the street. Her blood ran cold. The game had shifted. This wasn't just digital anymore. Emily locked her doors, closed her curtains, changed her passwords, but she knew it wasn't enough. She had awakened something in Nathan that was more dangerous than his public persona: desperation. He had lost everything, and men like him didn't let go quietly. The final act came not online, but in the real world. One evening, as she returned home, she noticed the door to her apartment was slightly ajar. She froze, the hallway humming with fluorescent light. Inside, she could hear the faint sound of movement, deliberate, waiting. Her mind raced. She could run. She could call for help. Or she could face him. Emily's hand tightened around her phone, the screen glowing with the emergency number half-dialed. And then, as if the universe itself held its breath, a shadow moved inside her apartment. The reckoning she had unleashed through screens and wires had come to her doorstep, no longer bound by pixels. She had wanted revenge in the age of social media. Now, she had to decide if she was prepared for revenge in the age of flesh and blood.